Hello, hello. I'm the colorblind architect coming to you with Archicad 28. And I know I have not been able to get any videos out on Archicad 28 yet, but I thought I would cover Keynotes. Yes, we're circling back to Keynotes. A couple years ago, I did a video on Keynotes and covered um, the different ways that you could do it in Archicad. Now, with version 28, we actually have a native Keynote tool, which is um, which is a really great tool. Hopefully, you'll enjoy using it. But here's the thing, Cadimage or CI, they still have their Keynotes tool, which I thought it would be kind of fun just to do a quick comparison between the two tools. So what I have here on the screen is a sample project from the USA template. And on the left here, this Keynotes palette is actually the CAD Image Keynotes palette, which hasn't really changed in a few years, but like I said, it is still a great tool. We're going to compare how that one works. And then this is the Keynotes palette for the native tool. And let's get started. Now, of course, as you can see, I've already got kind of a dummy project started and a couple Keynotes legends already started. So let's get into the drawing and let's learn how to do these. Now, this one right here is a CAD Image Keynote. So you can see this is the CAD Image, the CI Tools Keynote label. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to medicine dropper that. Just You should know that already if you're watching this video. This is not a video for beginners, but just a reminder that's the Option key on a Mac, um, and that brings you your medicine dropper tool. Which the nice thing about that is that immediately opens up the tool with all the settings that are already inscribed into that. Now, to place a label on CAD Image, what you do is you go over here to the CAD Image Keynotes legend and you just go ahead and double click on the note that you want, and then you can click it where it wants. If you want to edit a keynote, like for example, let's change the key of this just so that it actually, and let's say brick exterior. Let's say this is Interstate Atlas Brick Arctic White. And then for the spec reference, I'm just going to put something in there. Spec reference, what I usually do is put in either a website address for the product data, or if I do have a specifications, if it's a large enough project that I actually do have a spec book, then I'll put the specification reference in there to call the contractor's attention to that. Okay, so now that I've got that, I can double click on this one and click here. And as you can see, it places with that number. It's very simple to use, simple label dynamics. Remember, with the pet palette, you've got a few different options on how these work. You've got this option, which allows you to move the head of the keynote wherever you want. And then if we go over here and choose the arrow tool, that actually moves kind of the whole keynote like that. Okay, so that's how you operate those. So then let's talk about the appearance. If we go into the actual CI Tools Keynote label, um, the first thing you can do is just ignore the text size because that's not affected. The CI Tools Keynote label is not affected by this particular parameter. But the pointer, this does affect things, so you can set the points, the arrowhead type, there's a bunch of different. And then over here in the Keynotes label, this is where you get down to brass tacks. you can actually start changing um, the label shape. You can change the border pen, the background. Like for example, you can make the background like this nice little shade of teal, or whatever, right? Um, you can also adjust the frame to be fixed or long. So lots of settings there. And then on the actual key, this is the text parameter for this, so you can change the font, whether it's bold, underlined, italic, all the good stuff. And then finally, on the first panel of this palette, you can choose whether this label is going to be showing category, key, title, description, or spec reference, referring to these. Category is basically the folders in which these dwell. So I'm just going to leave it like that for now. And one of the things that we can also do, so if you want like a folder for these, so we can actually just drag and drop it into another keynote, and that keynote actually becomes a category. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in, a key for that and a title. So that way it will show up. Okay, now let's go back to our floor plan. And what you can see here is that the floor plan's updated. We've got the CAD Image Keynotes in place. But if we go over here to the Keynotes legend from CI Tools, it is not yet updated. So to do that in CI Tools Keynotes, you go to your CI Tools pull-down menu, Keynotes, and Update Schedules. Now, you can try the current layout only. Sometimes it glitches and doesn't actually update, so just be aware. But there you go. That's how you update it. This legend is an object that you can edit, so there's all kinds of settings in here. Like you can set what the category looks like, the key looks like, the title, the description, the spec reference, the frame, whether it's got, you can also describe whether it's got a frame, background, pens, all that stuff. So tons of great settings in here. I think the main thing that I would mention on the CI Tools Legend is that it does give you a really nice way to format the information, and it has a nice slick look to it. Okay, so that's CI Tools Keynotes. Now let's go to the new tool, the new Keynotes tool from Graphisoft, native to Archicad 28. So if we go back into the plan view, these keynotes here are the ones that are placed from this palette. So what you'll immediately notice first is how similar these are, and yet that they're different too. Okay, so first off, unlike the CI Tools keynotes, if you want a folder, you actually create a folder separate. So for this case, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on this folder. Oh, what just happened? Well, that's fun. So I think I just broke my palette. There we go. So what we want to do is we want to go in here, select that folder, and we're going to edit that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to do 04 masonry, and I don't need to put a description. And then on this keynote, I'm going to put 0401 brick veneer. And for the description, I'm going to put in build-in red modular. And I'm just going to put any spec section in there for right now. Okay, and then I'm also going to drag and drop that keynote into the folder for that. Okay, So once I have that, the other thing that you can do with these, you can also set favorites, which is very helpful. One of the things that is a little unfortunate on the CI tools keynotes, it doesn't seem as easy to create favorites of the way you want your keynotes to look. So I usually end up using the medicine, the pipette tool. But in this case, we can just go ahead and uh, click on our favorite, and then I can select the keynote that I want to place. And then instead of double clicking it, on this one you click place label, and then it allows you to place it. Now, once you're in there, you can move it around just like the CI Tools keynote, and including adjusting the length and all that stuff. Now, then when you go into the actual keynote settings, this is actually a auto text keynote. So this uses the same parameters as just about everything else. The difference is the text that's actually in the label is just keynote key. But what's interesting about that is you can actually change what you could potentially change what that says. You could add additional information if you wanted to create your own keynote. So arrowheads, line type, same thing. When you go into the text label, there's a very limited selection of keynote shapes. And I don't do this often, but shame on you, Graphisoft. Come on. That's an easy thing to do. Come on. Give us more keynote shapes. A lot of people like the hexagons. Um, a lot of people like octagons, or other shapes. So just give us more options. Give us the ability to customize the size and the shape a little bit more. But for right now, this is fit frame to text. If you unclick that, you can adjust manually the size of the box. The other thing to remember is that pill shape, or whatever box shape you show, only shows up if you have this frame checkbox checked. Okay? And this one, it does actually adjust based on this text size. So let's go back, and as you can see, I adjusted the text size and that lowered down. So once you have that, and same thing, you can just edit these keynotes just like in CI Tools, okay? And you can also plop it in. Okay, let's go back to the floor plan. Now, as you'll notice, as soon as I went to the floor plan, this legend actually already updated. It's already showing the information. Now, that right there is a huge improvement over the CI tools, because the CI tools, remember, you have to manually update it every time you want it to update. Now, the advantage to the CI tools method is that it's not going to eat up your CPU. It's not going to take extra time, because on a really large project, this Keynote's legend starts to get really slow when you have a ton of changes on a really large project. So just be aware of that it starts to slow you down a little bit. So, but anyways, now on to the next thing. The Keynote legend on the settings. Before giving you my judgment on this, I'm going to just go ahead and format the table. So first, let's go to the filter. One of the things I do like is that this allows you to choose either all keynotes in the project or visible keys in layout drawings, which is really nice, because some architects, they want to be able to put a single sheet that just has all the keynotes for the whole project. Now, personally, I find that strategy to be not very favorable to the contractor, because I've worked with enough contractors to know that they hate having to turn pages. They want everything they need for a specific plan view. They want everything on that sheet, because if it's not on that sheet, I can promise you there's going to be stuff missing from the actual building. So much better if you can actually have the keynote legend on the same plan. Now, next thing is filter folders. You can do all folders or a selected folder with subfolders. Now that's kind of nice because that way, if you are, let's say you're doing a finish plan, and on the finish plan, you're only dealing with category 9 from the spec from the spec book, right? Well, you could actually isolate folder 9 in your keynotes and have a keynote legend just for that. So, or let's say you're using these keynotes for a material legend, you could have a separate folder in your keynotes palette for that. So that's great. Then you can also set the order based on alphabetical or in keynotes palettes. So if you have like a specific order that you want to set things up in your palette, that's great. You can do that. So let's move on to the next page. So here's where you can select the fields. You can either do one column, or you can do two columns, or you can do three or four. You can, justify it. And then this row right here is where you actually say what information you want in there. And then display folder data that's going to be for the categories. So in this case, I'm going to show the key and the title. I don't really need to show the reference because, yeah, for usually the way I organize my keynotes is I'll have the folders just being the main category for the spec book chapters. And then folder hierarchy, show lowest folder only. That's mainly important because if you do have a bunch of subfolders, you can it can get kind of confusing. But if you do want that hierarchy to show up in the folder, great, you can do that. And then you go onto your table format. There's some additional stuff there, text format. So all pretty boilerplate stuff. Now, here's what I have against this. There is no way that I can see in this particular label, or in this particular legend, to organize it in a more vertical format. Like, as you notice in the CI Tools legend, I'm able to have the key, title, description, and spec graph in a little bit more of a more organized fashion so that it can go more oriented. Largely because the way I like to do my keynotes is I like to have them in a 4-inch wide column going along this side of the page, the right side of the page. In this case, in order to fit like if I actually try to fit it into a 4-inch column with all four, it gets really confusing to read. And so you end up having to make the table a bit more horizontal. And I think that's a problem. Now, I think this is going to be a really easy problem to solve because this is just an object and it can be edited in you can edit this in you can go down to libraries objects and open object, and you could actually edit the GDL script for this particular tool right within Archicad, and you can save out your own version. But here's the thing, I'm not that good at GDL script. So for right now, I'm going to wait to see if anybody else comes with something in the next few months to improve this. But at the same time, it may be a good idea to just play around with this and see, like, hey, maybe somebody can come up with something that looks better. Because right now, I think the current legend looks very lame. It's actually quite awful because it's just, yeah, like I want something that's a little bit more tweakable with the different text sizes and everything, kind of like the CI tools. But as I said, the main advantage to the new Keynotes tool is it's actually easier to operate. It comes free with Archicad, and the legend automatically updates. But hey, on the flip side, CAD Image, their Keynote it has more flexibility with how the keynotes look, and also more flexibility with how the palette looks. So if that's worth it to you, it might be still worth it to keep using that. Um, I'm kind of on the fence about it right now because like I feel like I really want the built-in tool to work. I want it to be the one that wins out. So final little note, both CI Tools keynotes and the Archicad native keynotes, both of them come with the ability to export and import the keynotes lists. This is really great if you need to be able to move keynotes from one project to another. So right here, there's the export button and it sends it to an XML file. I believe I think it's probably, well, it might be a Keynotes file. But either way, it sends it out in a format that you can read. You can also send it to an Excel workbook. And then on the import, you can import it either all or just selected ones. And then you choose whether it's an Excel workbook or a Keynotes file. And so that's a great way to transfer stuff. Same thing with the CI tools. If you want to export or import, it's pretty easy to do. It's just in a different place than than the Archicad tools, and I think it might actually even be. Oh, yeah, it's actually in the menu here, so you can import and export the keynotes here. And that one actually does use their own proprietary .keynotes file type. So unfortunately, I did try it. It does not transfer over to the new Archicad tool. So with that, let me know in the comments how you're planning on using it. Are you going to be using the Archicad keynotes or the CI Tools keynotes? Um, do you have any experience working with GDL script? And if you do, I'd love to collaborate with you and see if we can come up with something together to make a really great, keynotes legend. Especially if we could have one that has like the title and maybe fits different formats, so that you can fit it into the drawing sheet that works best with the way that you do your work. So, anyways, thank you for joining me today. I'm the Colorblind Architect. Peace out.